Now, before we explore more useful use cases or scenarios for some decorators, I want to briefly show you all the other places where you can add decorators. Well, obviously, we can add decorators to classes, but there are more places where we can add them. For that, I'll create a new class, because we need a class for any decorator we want to use, but we don't have to add all decorators directly to the class. Let's say we have a product class here, and in the product class we have a title maybe, which is a string, and we can assign a value here with the constructor. Of course, we could also use the shortcut and do it all in one step in the constructor, as you learned earlier. Here I'll take the longer route. We can have a method there, get price with tax, and for that I expect to get a tax rate, which is a number, and for that to work we should also store a price here, price property, which we also get as part of the constructor. Again, we could use the shortcut here, but I'll do it like this. And then in this method, I will return this.price times 1 plus tax, so that we have this utility method. And we can also add a getter and a setter if you want to. For example, we can add a setter for the price here, where we get the value, which should be a number, and where we control that we can only set certain values. Now, to make this work, I'll rename price up here to underscore price and make it private actually, so that we can't directly reach it. And here I will set this underscore price, and here I will use this underscore price. And with these changes in the setter, we can set this underscore price equal to the value we get, but before we do so, we can check if value is greater than 0, so that we don't accept negative prices. So with that, we only set the price if it's greater than 0, otherwise we don't do anything. Indeed, we could throw an error in the other case. Invalid price should be positive. So that's something we can do. Now we have a class with two properties, with an accessor, and also with a method here. And this method has a parameter. Now to all these things we can add decorators. And let's start with a good old friend, a log decorator. Here I'll name it log to not clash with logger up there, because this log decorator will not be added to a class, and therefore it will get different arguments. It will get arguments though, and which arguments a decorator gets depends on where you add it, which is why I can't reuse logger, because that was fine-tuned to only work with classes. Now here I don't have a decorator factory actually, I just have the decorator function like this, but still, which arguments this decorator function gets depends on where we use it. For example, we can add a decorator to a property. Here I can add log like this, and if you add a decorator to a property, the decorator receives two arguments. The first argument is the target of the property, and for an instance property like this one, which we call on an instance if we work with it, this will be the prototype of the object that was created. If we had a static property here, target would refer to the constructor function instead. So here I'll say any, because I don't know exactly which structure this object will have. The second argument we get is the property name, simply. That could be a string here. Could of course also be a symbol. We don't know what we use as a property identifier. And then here I will log property decorator so that we can see when this runs. And I want to console log target and also property name so that we see what's in these two values. With that, if we save that, it compiles without errors. And if we go to our server, we see property decorator gets printed down there. And this is our output we get. We see here, that's the prototype of our object, because we're not seeing title and price here, but we do see get price with tags, and indeed methods are registered on the prototype of an object. So that's the prototype of our object. And we see title over here on the right. That's the property name we're working with. Now, when exactly does this logger execute though? Well, as you can tell, since I never instantiate any product, it executes basically when your class definition is registered by JavaScript. So it executes when you define this property basically to JavaScript as part of your class here, as part of this constructor function, which is created here in the end. This is when this property decorator executes.